The music sung and played in this broadcast conveys something of the sonority of Ascension Tide under Henry VIII and his children. Most of the music that you'll hear was composed in the 1540s or 1550s. But Ascension Tide was also a highly visual feast. It was commemorated with processions that wended their way out of church, around town and back again. Here we see a diagram of the Ascension procession from a book printed in 1545. You can see three banners. The one at the top shows, believe it or not, a lion representing St. Mark the Evangelist, whose feast fell on the 25th of April. Behind the two banners of St. George, whose feast fell on the 23rd of April, you can see the image of the dragon, which was carried in the Rogation Tide processions. These took place on the 3 days preceding Ascension Day. The tail would then be cut off the dragon, symbolising the triumph of God over the devil, of good over evil. We will perform here a version of the Ascension Tide hymn, Aeterne rex altissime. This hymn has 6 verses. Before the Reformation, it was normal for composers to set only the even-numbered verses to polyphony. The choir will sing verses 2 and 6 to a setting by John Sheppard of the Chapel Royal. You can easily hear the plainsong melody in his settings in the treble part. Sheppard didn't set verse 4, or if he did, it hasn't survived. So the choir will sing verse 4 in far burden. This is a form of improvisation in which the upper voices add harmonies on top of a melody that was itself derived from the proper plainsong tune, a bit like an inverted descant. Here we see the far burden melody in a 15th century manuscript in Oxford's Bodleian Library. See if you can spot this being sung in verse 4. And what about the odd-numbered verses? These could be sung in plainsong, and this is what we'll do in verse 1. But it was also common for the odd-numbered verses to be played on the organ. There is just one solitary organ verse from the 16th century for this hymn, and we find that in the so-called Manana book, which was copied as a teacher's compendium around 1560. You can see it here. This is by John Redford, organist of St. Paul's Cathedral. Redford was absolutely ingenious at making organ pieces out of plainsong melodies. In this case, he thumbs out the proper plainsong tune in the left hand. But the clever trick here is in the right hand, where there is a 5-note ostinato or a recurrent melody that Redford counterpoints against the plainsong. You can see it very clearly at the beginning of the right-hand stave, just after the G clef. Try to count how many times Redford manages to sneak in this ostinato during verse 5. For the missing verse 3, I shall do what all Tudor organists had to do, improvise. This improvisation will use one of the standard techniques, which is to take a simple idea, in this case a scale, and keep on reusing it for as long as you can get away with it.
Since March of 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic struck and the first lockdown began, for St. Wulfram's Church Choir to keep singing together, we have had to learn to work in 2 ways that were entirely new to us. During times when we have not been able to meet, our choristers, youth choir and adult singers have all learnt the art of producing individual recordings while listening to a MIDI file and following musical direction, for this all to be edited together, making a virtual representation of the sound of the choir. At times such as now, when restrictions have been eased, we have been able to sing in person in much smaller ensembles than before, while maintaining social distance. In creating this Ascension hymn, we have experimented with mixing these 2 modes of output. Not all of our singers have returned to in-person singing yet, and so this has also been a way of including all members who wanted to contribute and singing fully together as a choir. For singers, both in virtual recording and in socially distanced singing, it can feel like they are on their own, isolated from the whole picture. Virtual singers can't hear the sound of all the other members of the choir when they record. Likewise, when singing socially distanced, singers can often find it harder to hear others than when, as in the past, we packed together in the choir stalls. In both of these modes of output, to get results, singers need to summon the courage just to go for it. But while the singers are more isolated from each other and fragmented as an ensemble, in quite another respect they are trusted to take much more individual responsibility for crafting their vocal line. The repertoire of Renaissance polyphony is a wonderful resource in these times, as the music is constructed by weaving together individual threads into a beautiful musical tapestry. We have spent much of the past year learning to sing in this style and exploring the rich Tudor musical heritage, guided and helped by Professor Williamson. Putting these two modes of output together, we have sought to enable in-person and virtual singers to be equal parts of the output. It has presented a unique challenge, the challenge of synchronization. Part of this synchronization is in pitch. All singers, virtual and in-person, needed to sing 2/3 of a semitone below concert pitch in order to match with the organ versets filmed remotely in Newcastle. So we have sung this at historic Tudor pitch based on instruments with 5-foot pipes. Equally, though, the result was always going to stand or fall on whether the socially distanced choir could match timing exactly to the split second with the virtual singers. Neither the virtual or in-person singers can hear each other in this method. For the choir singing in St. Wulfram's Church, all I could give as a director was the starting note and a visual cue mirroring the metronomic beat of the virtual file. This in appearance echoes the Tudor practice known as tactus conducting, which is a down on one minim and an up on the next. With no further help, no entries given, no breaths or expressive shaping shown by the conductor, all the responsibility for creating the beauty of sound, shape and phrasing then lies with the singers. We hope you enjoy the result. I would like to express my thanks to Professor Williamson for our ongoing collaboration, as well as to the many people who have helped with the production. Most importantly, I would like to thank our youth choir, choral scholars and adult singers who will take any challenge. Please enjoy our blended reconstruction of the Tudor hymn Aeterne Rex Altissime, subtitled with a poetic translation by the Victorian hymn writer John Mason Neale, and marking the Feast of the Ascension.
Aeterne